Now, my name is James Breslin. I live here in Inishowen, Redcastle, in the Inishowen Peninsula. I farm sucklers and sheep. Well, I'm the what do you call it, the host farm for the EIP, you know, and there's 5 measures in it. There's cattle back to the mountain, there's ponds, there's diverse sward, there's red clover, and there's agroforestry. You know, and I was able to take on all the challenges, you know, and show that it would work, you know, because some of it I thought wouldn't work, but it has worked and I'm happy with it. Now, well, I planted maybe more than a lot of the rest of them, you know, but agroforestry, it was more shelter, and some of it you'll see later on, you know, it's planted down the kind of riparian zone. It was to protect any runoff of any fertiliser, no more I'm not non-fertiliser now because I've gone organic, but anything that was coming off the land was the trees was going to capture it before it got into the waterway. The timber, you know, how valuable it'll be, whether it be for firewood or whether it be for doing something with, you know, but that's the only difference. But the shelter would be my main priority at the minute anyway. Well, the longer term plan is to let stock back into it again. They're closed out of it now at the minute. There's just scrap mounded. There's a mixture of trees. There's hazel, there's birch, there's elder, there's round tree, there's a few oak, you know, but that would be a poor bit of land, you know, and it suits me here where it's at because I can let stock on from 3 different areas of the farm, you know, until it to shelter. So I would say it'll take, you know, another 10 years before cattle can go into it. Sheep maybe will be allowed into it before that, but before cattle will go into it. But no, I think there are a lot of the shelter done away with on this farm, you know, through bad advice from different farm bodies, you know, down the years, was to get rid of your ditches and get rid of your hedges, get rid of everything, turn it into green grass, you know, and produce more and put on more fertiliser and whatever. But for up here it didn't work, you know, and we're happier with the way it should have been left, the way it was, you know. So I think, you know, that lots of times now when you listen to any thing about the environment, it's planting more trees. That's just what they seem to want, you know, and maybe we're ahead of the pack, you know, by having them planted already, but I intend to put on more trees, you know, different places. But I think rather than trees everywhere, you just need to put trees where you want to put them. You know, I think that's what farmers need to do. That was the great thing about the EIP, you know, that Henry started. He come round to you like, and it was, what do you want to do? Where do you want to put the trees? Where do you want to put your clover? Where do you want to put your diverse sward? You know, it was wherever you wanted to do it. Well, let's go ahead, try it there to see how it works, and it has worked.
When we started the project here, we looked to see what current schemes were available to farmers for agroforestry, and when we analysed it, we felt there was one severe deficiency, which was the department's idea of agroforestry was to end up with a forest, and we felt what we wanted for our farmers was to end up with loads of trees on a functioning livestock farm to actually complement the activity on the farm and not replace it. What we are actually standing on here is what we like to term a green barn. Basically, we have an area on the farm that already has some trees that has been used for animals for shelter, and what we have wanted to do is augment that with more trees to make it even more effective, and basically replacing a concrete barn with a barn consisting of trees. You know, it's an excellent environment for young, vulnerable animals to get hardened off, if you like, to the outside environment, maybe after periods of housing, or to extend the grazing season in the autumn, and just has loads of uses for James on the farm here to manage his animals in a very healthy, clean setting.
I think there's a place for trees on every farm, you know, but provided that you put them where you want rather than where somebody else is telling you. You know, even you're a dairy farmer and they're making money, maybe what the rest of us have not been doing for a long time, but they're making good money at the minute. But even the dairy farmer has some place in the farm for some trees, maybe not enough, but for some. And like every little helps, you have to start somewhere.
Well, I suppose for local farmers, I would say come here and see what we have done, and we hope to open up that to more and more farmers. I think farmers need to engage with the department and maybe make more sense of the current schemes available to them, and that there's joined up thinking, that they're not being penalised on one hand for planting trees at the same time. You know, that really needs to be ironed out. And I think there's potential for a huge amount of agroforestry if the dots are joined up.